how are you guys? Good? Yes? All right. A little bit. How are you enjoying your Latitude 59 experience? How was it so far? Good? Sounds great. We have another exciting podcast episode happening live. Actually, this time we are live streaming to all over Europe. Hello, Eurovision. And we're going to talk about AI, something that has been around for a while now. And we will discuss European AI edge, startups, SMEs, and smarter growth. So, give a round of applause to Frederick Milani, Kirke MAAR, Alois Krtil, and Mikael Ljungblom. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to solve the biggest problem, and that is how we can bring European Union and Europe at par with America and maybe even the Chinese. But before we begin, we have three very distinguished members here who's going to help us solve this big problem. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, so maybe we can begin with you, Kirke.
Hello, so great to be here. I'm Kirke MAAR. I'm running AI and Robotics Estonia, and AI and Robotics Estonia is an innovation center, and we aim to boost the Estonian economy, that our companies would use more AI and robotics.
So my name is Alois, great to be here. I'm also running an AI center based in Hamburg, Artificial Intelligence Center. Hamburg, Eric, and as well, I'm a CTO, so dealing with education technology at Pingdom.
Hi, as we all heard, my name is Mikael Ljungblom. I am the Director for Public Policy and International Relations at AI Sweden, which is the Swedish National Center for Applied AI. The mission we have is to accelerate the use of AI in Sweden.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Now, this is a very big question here, and we hear it. We've seen a little bit debate about this. United States is just taking the lead. I mean, when it comes to AI, they're Usain Bolt. The question then is there any point to compete with Usain Bolt? I mean, how could we ever come to the tracks? And then the other issue is that once Usain Bolt has picked up acceleration, how do we even catch up? How is the situation? Is this race already lost? Should we just think of doing something else? Or can we catch up in some way? Is there hope?
So maybe I kick it off. I think that the race has just begun, so this is the first point. And the cards are reshuffled like every month. Yeah, we see startups like Mistral coming up from Europe. Yeah, going straight into the top 3 in the world. And so I don't think that a race is lost or we have to catch up. But still there is a lot of things to do, and I think we can not only compete, but we can lead, but we have to do it a European way.
What is the European way? How can we distinguish ourselves? Or how can we do it differently? Or is it a question of just copying what the Americans are doing? Maybe not the Chinese, but at least the Americans.
I mean, I think this is a multifaceted scenario, right? I mean, we have the startup scene, we have the sort of sovereignty issue, what kind of technology do we need to control ourselves? We have investment, capital. I mean, there's so many different things here. And I think in terms of the European way, I think we of course have to be European, but we cannot rely on business as usual. I think this is a key thing. And we have had multiple reports saying this already. Draghi has made one of them, of course. So we need to work a lot faster. We need to be very much more adoption focused, I think, to make sure that we are in the part of the value chain where we create the value, right? So we need to be very close to the companies, very close to the public sector, and that doesn't mean that we should just tell everyone to use ChatGPT. That's not what we're saying, but quite advanced innovation needs to happen very close to those sectors. I think this is one of the key things.
Yes, I completely agree that, first of all, there is hope for sure. And I think the race we are in is a different race. It's a race where we take maybe more cautious steps, but it's human-centered and it's trustworthy AI we want to focus on. But we definitely need to focus on the strength of Europe and find the domains where AI is already, where Europe is already strong, like robotics, manufacturing, energy, health data, and there is definitely hope.
I would be curious to learn a bit more about the fact that if you look at the United States, it's at the end of the day still one country with somewhat standard regulations and so on. And then we are, as Europe, we're basically a bunch of countries with different regulations or with different flavors to each nation. We have Germany, who's big, and then we have Estonia, that is geographically small but digitally large. Could that be a benefit? Is that something we could use to get ahead of the race, or is that going to work in our disadvantage?
So I think if we would walk together, we would be a giant, yeah, in terms of market, 450 million and so on. So we have the critical mass. But as you pointed out, we are not a single digital market right now. And so the ease of doing business is very much niched, and it's, countries are tending to build up their own regulations and their bubbles, and so it's not interconnected. So if we could see it more as a digital gateway, then we could really speed up.
Yes, I agree that I tend to think that it's both a potential, but at the moment it could be considered as a weakness, the fragmentation in Europe, that the more we have regional collaboration in terms of not only between the centers, but also between the companies, large corporations, banks, and so on, that we have less fragmentation and we actually, in action, move to the single market in digitalization and AI. It is a weakness, but there is a huge potential to make it as a growth.
I mean, I think a very large responsibility lies at the member states, because at the moment we have very different cultures in terms of how we regulate, how we innovate, how fast we are. And I think the only way Europe can actually make this and turn this into a benefit is to be inspired by the countries that move really, really fast, like Estonia. I think Sweden for sure could learn a lot from Estonia, and I think many other European countries as well. But I think that is the only way, because otherwise we will have these kind of front-runner small countries that are always forced to adapt very quickly to the surroundings, whilst we have some other larger countries maybe that take a lot of time in changing. And I think this dynamic needs to change a little bit.
So what you're saying is that the way forward for Europe is unity in diversity.
Yeah, but I think also everyone must be willing to change and not to just rely on how they have always acted. I mean, this has to be a core sort of handshake in Europe. I think that is really key, to be able to be very agile and move very fast. Because, this is what's going to decide who actually takes on the next race, right?
Yeah, and due to the fragmentation, I would believe the more important is that if the 28 countries cannot move fast together, it's about the regional powerhouses in Europe and who can do it quicker. That we need to be quicker, that's for sure. And I don't think it's only about fragmentation, it's about entrepreneurial culture. I think in that terms, fragmentation could be reduced by let me use now maybe a little bit like American mindset, doing it quicker, doing it that failing is part of the business culture, that it's not feared. And I think Estonia is pretty good in that already. So it is about how to reduce fragmentation through the entrepreneurial culture, in fact, also.
So Estonia is good at failing or failing fast?
It's not fearing to fail.
Not fearing to fail.
Yes, I think that's one of the crucial things in innovation is to not to fear the failure. It's the first step. I think if you have a society, a very conservative society, larger countries, and failing is considered as a taboo, then you have less innovation, less startups. So in that sense, I really think Estonia is a forerunner already, and that helps in turn to reduce the fragmentation, that you go and you try, and that's what we've seen with IRA as well, is that if we encourage the first steps in AI innovation, it's actually a very big task in innovation to do the first steps.
Yeah. I'm curious about the prerequisites we have in Europe. I mean, if we look at our academic history, we have universities that predate United States. So what is the state of talent and knowledge here? Are we competitive in that regard, or are we lagging? Is the foundation there for picking up this pace in terms of knowledge?
So I think definitely the foundation is there. If you just look at, for example, deep tech or AI papers and brilliant, excellent universities, the foundation, of course, is there. But very often these kind of ecosystems that have a lot of legacy tend to really move a bit slower and just adding one by one. And in times where you have like innovation cycles of weeks, yeah, or a month, it doesn't fit together. So we have to learn how we use this kind of excellent R&D base to move quicker and not to stuck into technology readiness level 6 or even 5 and not go into commercialization.
I fully agree. I think this is absolutely key. And I think to add on to that, I think those kinds of sort of maybe shorter and more adaptive approaches need to be placed very close to where the value is actually created. That is the public sector and the private sector. So we need to be very, very close to where AI can actually turn into value and not keep it at university. Because I mean, it might be nice and you might write papers, but what happens in the end?
So it needs to be transferred from theoretical knowledge to practical implication that reaches society.
And you need to work on real-world data, because otherwise you will not make any innovations.
Yes, I fully agree, and we've seen it with the IRA Center as well, that it's a pretty novel center in terms of being located at the university, that to shift the mindset also inside the university, that we actually work for the society, we go and test, and we actually find completely new angles for the research results also, that you go and validate. And we work on TRL 6 to 7 to actually very near market. It's a service called Test Before Invest, and we really encourage companies through testing. And so I think that's the point, is that if the universities and academia would go one step out of the labs more often and really validate among companies that actually there is a huge potential for economies in Europe.
And actually, sorry, I'm jumping in here. I think there's a policy implication here, because I think everyone goes where the money is, right? So you should really incentivize these universities and these labs to more or less force them to do this, right? Especially when you can use EU money. I think this is one of the lessons that we need to learn.
If I may just challenge that, so why is speed so important? Isn't this more as a marathon sprint rather than a 100-meter dash? So if the Americans are running at the speed of 100 meters and we are coming at the marathon pace, would that mean that in the beginning it seems that we're lagging but we will catch up? Or you have to run marathon at the speed of Usain Bolt?
I would say it depends on where we are running. If we only run inside the academic circles, it doesn't. I mean, we will never run as fast as the US companies. That is for sure. I mean, that we can know. So that means that no matter how far we run over there, we will always be behind, because we will not come to these groundbreaking new ideas that can then be transferred into the market and suddenly challenge these big companies, because they have all the research, they have all the talents. I mean, in terms of this segment, right? But if we run a lot closer to the public sector or the private sector in terms of specific applications, in terms of adapting technology to use it, to leverage new business models, to make our businesses more efficient, for sure, then it matters for how long we run.
I think in a kind of land-grabbing scenario, what big tech is playing out right now with our data, I mean, it's a real-time bidding on our attention going on. We shouldn't like sit back, but be, of course, active, you know, to get into a different kind of mode and into, I mean, in the end, it's a power game. And so in a power game, if you are the last one to join the party, I mean, you know what happens.
Okay, so to summarize this, what I hear is that, first of all, there is hope. And there is quite a good chance of us to being at par. What we need to do is to capitalize on what makes us unique. And that is partly that, although we're fragmented, that also gives advantages where some areas are moving faster, are more adaptive, and then the others can learn from that. And the second thing is that in Europe we have a greater chance, or the strategy should be more towards using AI in the public and the commercial sector, which is maybe not the case in the United States, where it doesn't spill over to the public sector. So the processes are still very old school, if we can call it like that. But if we can capitalize that so our governmental agencies also adapt and adopt, then we are a force to be reckoned with. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, I think so. And I would also say that if you look, for example, into European, German, but also kind of European engineering, there are so many skills. There are so many really like world champions in terms of SMEs, where the size doesn't matter, but they are still like the number ones in their fields. And they have so much data and they have so much power, but they lack a bit this kind of speed to make really, to come from this kind of excitement into execution. So how to really cope with AI, how really to leverage it. And so B2B, highly secured and also value-driven AI. I think that's one of the strongest like take-ins we can follow.
So a good example is also robotics, and we have very, very good success stories in Europe, where in robotics we are forerunners already. So we need to find the domains, or health technology, health AI, and some others. So it's about also the focus and the domain. So it's not about universally that we are lagging behind.
Okay, so how do we create a fertile ground for these things to grow and advance even faster? What is the fertilizer, or what's the soil and what's the seed? One aspect, of course, is accessibility to funding. Another one is talent development. Another one might be how we can enable the startups to actually start growing. How do we handle this? What do we need to consider in this regard?
So I think what we, for example, can experience here, and I'm coming like, I don't know, for 6-7 years already to Estonia to get new inspiration and also great collaborations, is the ease of doing business. So if you are an entrepreneur here, you get so much support. It's so easy, so the organizational type of aspects and sort of things like that. And also, I haven't experienced someone who really sees here also this kind of real big regulatory barriers, but it's more about speaking about, okay, that there are boundaries and guardrails instead of it stops someone. So it more, roots you to, as we said, a value-driven kind of innovation approach. And so I think it's a good example. If you have a good ease of doing business here, you can really also grow fast, adapt fast, and then of course go abroad with that.
Yes, and another aspect is education. I think education is going through structural changes at the moment. So in that case, we need to look at new skills and all the levels of education. AI Leap in Estonia is a good example of introducing AI in a gymnasium, and but also universities, that you need to have strong programs. And in the lunchtime, we had a good idea that actually we should forbid, I'm sorry to say it out now, a classical thesis perhaps, that if we have 2,000 students at Taltech and they would do their AI validation and pilot works in companies instead of writing thesis. So that's already a huge capital to go and test and validate and do it. So I think we need disruptive innovation to do things in a new way, also in education. And that was interesting statistics that we have a majority of students, 10 plus, who already use AI, but we have like 3% of teachers using AI. So that's these statistics can be questionable, but it shows a trend. I don't want to focus on numbers. So I think education is extremely important, and that also concerns the SMEs. In IRA, we have trained more than 1,000 company employees on AI since 2-3 years. And we see that awareness is something that actually you are more confident to invest. You're more confident to test and try and go. So I think that's an important pillar also.
I mean, I think it's a very complex landscape. I mean, we have the national levels, we have the EU level, we also have the regional and municipal levels, right? So, and many different people actually need to take leadership where they stand. I think this is absolutely key. Because without these bold leaders and without the leadership from the top that can then set the sort of prerequisites and the regulatory landscape, I mean, everything gets a bit cramped. You know, this is the risk of fragmentation. Yeah. So we need bold leaders, both in the public and the private sector, to actually drive this change. I think this is 80% of everything. But how do you inspire them? That's the key question, I guess.
And perhaps, perhaps the third thing I would like to point out is the very like a high-level AI infrastructure, the computing facilities, not only computing facilities and HPC, but also the labs to test for companies. So that is really developing in Europe, the AI factories, and we trying also to connect companies who need temporary computing facilities to test out, and that's the infrastructure side is also very relevant to compete with other global markets.
How developed is the infrastructure in Europe? I mean, if a company needs some high-performance computing and so on, do they have a place to go, or is it like, no, there's a long line, or that's not even financially feasible for them? Where do we stand on the infrastructural foundation?
I think it's what concerns HPC, high-performance computing. It's pretty well developed. We have like regional, national HPC facilities. We have Lumi in Finland we can use. But the question is that it goes technical. They don't have the awareness and level of how to use it, and there's a lot to grow in that terms. But the infrastructure is there, and it's evolving. EU is investing highly in the infrastructure now, and I think there is. It's a potential to go more in detail and actually to go and help the companies how to actually use it.
Okay. So let's get a bit more practical. I mean, we've talked about what everybody else needs to do, and we've talked about the whole European Union has to shift and rethink and become more united through fragmentation. But practically speaking, what are the initiatives we can do? What are the things that are ongoing to help us catch up or to help us advance significantly better?
I mean, I can start. In Sweden, we launched AI Sweden about 6 years ago. We were 3 people then. We're 100 people now. We do quite large innovation programs together with stakeholders from both the private and the public sector on quite an advanced scale, actually. We have these kind of leadership programs. We work in many different fields because everything is relevant. I mean, there's a technology aspect, but there's also an organizational and cultural aspect to organizations to actually adopt AI. And then we, of course, have the policy landscape. So we act in all of these strands with the 100 people that we have. And a year ago, we realized, I mean, now we are now big enough to think a little bit bigger. So we set out to see if there's a possibility to do something on a Nordic-Baltic regional basis. And it turns out that was possible because we spoke to the Nordic Council of Ministers. They wanted the same thing, and basically everyone is quite aligned. So 1 year later, we're just in the midst of actually filing our application to the Nordic Council of Ministers for funding for 3 years. We will then add private funding to that and try to launch a center by October, actually.
What does that mean, that you will launch a center? What will this center do, and how will this center help startups or companies?
Yeah.
Give me some details, juicy details here, please.
So I think three main strands. One of them is to facilitate the adoption-driven work that is being done nationally already.
What does that mean?
So that means, for example, in Sweden, we run a project called MLOps. How do you run 100 to 1,000 models inside an organization, make sure that you update them, that they don't drift, that you have the organizational capacity to monitor this. This is super complicated. We're doing this together with a bunch of different actors. That can be scalable across the Nordic Baltics, for sure. So that is one very concrete example, but it can be anything else from talent programs to educational initiatives, you name it. These things that have already been developed nationally can just be brought up to a larger scale, and you can learn the methods, you can learn the tools, and we can share it. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel in all of the different countries. So that is one thing. But it's important that you mentioned SMEs, because, I mean, a Nordic Baltic Center cannot directly address the SMEs in the entire region. That would mean that we would have to hire 5,000 people. We cannot. So that work will still stay on the national level. But the Nordic Baltic Center can facilitate the coordination and the knowledge sharing. Right? Second thing, policy. We think that there needs to be a much stronger policy voice in Europe from the Nordic Baltic region. At the moment, we're reacting to other countries' proposals. We are nowhere in terms of actually shaping the agenda on an EU level. I think this needs to change. Finally, we think we can run a few very advanced innovation projects. Sharing of proprietary data between large organizations, maybe something on healthcare, for sure development of large language models. These things are already in place, but they can be coordinated in a better way. So I would say these things are what we want to achieve.
So piggybacking back on what you said about this Nordic Baltic, what are we talking about?
I mean, we're talking about, to be very concrete, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, speaking to Estonia, not least Kirke here, Latvia and Lithuania.
And what will happen? We will have a common center that will collaborate across this country?
So there will be a secretariat placed in Sweden, actually, with a few people. But then we will locate people into all of the participating countries. So the idea is that at least from the start, 2 people in each participating country will be employed sort of nationally, but work into the center. So it would be a semi-distributed approach.
So this would mean that companies in Estonia would benefit from the learnings and the insights and the knowledge produced in Denmark or experiences in Sweden.
That is the general idea.
Okay, so that's how we're starting to build across the fragmented Europe and capitalize on that. Okay, wonderful. What else are we doing or can we do practically to boost?
So I may also share an example. It's a big project that also united our both centers already for 3 years. And it's called the European Digital Innovation Hub Network, EDI. And the idea is a bit in a direction of like a network or a gateway of different kind of excellence centers connecting on the one hand the hotspots that also have of course different characteristics. So we're speaking about different playgrounds, so diverse different playgrounds, and they are good for innovation, as we know, as well as to share, as you said, some good practices and not reinventing in any node the wheel again and again. And for example, when it comes now to the shifts towards quantum computing, so towards new kind of platforms also for AI, so quantum machine learning and so on. I mean, the investments would be so high if you want to spread that all over Europe. So it makes sense to look at the characteristics and the preferences of the special places, and then try to connect them, that you can unite together, that you are united and can act together. So that's the idea of this kind of EDI.
Yes, with this ED funding, we have seen remarkable spillover effects. I would say that the core of our activity is targeted to Estonian SMEs. We are funded publicly, but we have 270 companies benefiting in Test Before Invest trainings. They get direct help from IRE. But we also see that we have good examples of companies who actually can benefit from other partner countries' help, from Sweden, Germany, Ireland we have, and they don't only get a good AI expert, they actually get near to the market they want to go. So this is practically a spillover effect of being networked, that you smaller companies, for example from Estonia, they meet larger corporations in other countries and they get contacts, and it actually reduces again the fragmentation in Europe. So yes, the direct, I think, expectation from the ERICs is to serve the local and regional or your country's SMEs, and to make them more keen to invest in AI and robotics, but it's actually going pretty cross-border already.
Okay, so that's quite promising. Now, am I correct to assume that if we want to, and as we are moving to faster accelerate our efforts here, it's not that we can just be passive and wait for governments or policies and so on to do everything and then suddenly the magic mushroom will pop. It's not going to be like that. So it means that we have the grassroots, on the business grassroots level, also need to do something. So if I'm now a SME and I have a company and I want to contribute with my part to advancing Europe, what do I do?
Which country are you in?
I can be. Let me begin. I'm in Estonia and see what. Oh no. Let's begin with Sweden. Let's see. We're in Sweden. I'm an SME in Sweden, and I want to contribute to advancing AI in Europe. What do I do? What's my first step?
I mean, do you want to contribute by becoming better at using AI, or are you already using AI? And
however I can contribute. I assume that most SMEs have not really begun this transformational journey yet.
And I think a key thing, I mean, Kirke will tell you more about this, but a key thing about SMEs, from my experience, is they are very focused on their own core business and surviving until the next month, maybe growing, but they are not really in these sort of idealistical terms looking to contribute. I'm sure they would be happy to, but I think they have quite enough on their plate. So the question is then, how can we make it easier for them to become even more efficient while they almost have no time to do strategy workshops or integrate new tools into their already functioning business? That is the key question for me. And actually, AI Finland, who is one of the consortium partners in this new Nordic Baltic Center, they have found a way where they use the consultancies already existing in Finland, and they have made a sort of basic course for the leadership of SMEs that everyone has actually agreed on sort of using the same methods and doing it the same way. So they are now scaling this across Finland with a bunch of SMEs. It's super interesting. Yes. So I would say they are leading on this, and again, I mean, if we could find a mechanism to learn how they do, that could be done in all of the Nordic Baltic region and in Europe for sure.
Yes, I completely agree. It's not about AI, it's about efficiency and productivity for the companies. Actually, IRIS Center is also measured, it's measured through how the company's productivity raises. It's not about actually innovating in AI only, like per se. It is about how you do more work and how you do it easier, how your quality raises, how your logistic improves, and then we start always from business processes. We don't start from the technology. Technology is just a tool to actually to increase the efficiency, but we start from like pillar by pillar, the vertical business processes, where are the bottlenecks, how we can actually increase the productivity, and then comes in whether you need robotics, AI, sometimes you need other kind of technologies. So AI is just a tool, a very powerful one, but still a tool.
Yeah. So just what you're saying is that one of the biggest obstacles here for SMEs to get on board is that they don't have time. They just don't have the time to start reading and learning. So the way we can help them is by providing this training, providing this awareness, and focusing on what gives them value, which is either efficiency or growth.
And exactly, and actually here, I mean, I think this is an interesting point in the discussion, because what has happened in the last few years is that suddenly we have off-the-shelf AI products that can easily be used almost immediately by SMEs. And they are usually being provided by the large American tech companies, right? But that is actually of a huge potential benefit. So I mean, we need to have this hybrid approach. How do we act, and how do we make sure that we actually create the value? If we use the products and become really good, and we have super productive SMEs in Europe, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think that there is so much talent, and especially young talent around Europe. If you look at numbers, I mean, about 60-70% of all Gen AI open source code and developments, worldwide developments, are basically done by people from Europe. Yeah, they're sometimes on the paychecks of big techs, yeah, working for them, but still they would join like these kind of championship SMEs. They would join like family businesses and so on. But very often it's the challenge is to give them the right ground, you know, to enable them to invest into this kind of talent. So I think that we should also look at from the human perspective side. This is something we can be proud of in Europe, that we have this kind of different way approaching AI and technology at all. And I think that there is a need for that, especially in these times of red line crossings from a geopolitical perspective.
So did I understand you correctly? Majority of AI research or code that has been written in the open source is from European talents?
Yes. Yeah, and they are living in Europe.
They live in Europe.
They live in Europe.
Europeans.
Yes, and they are working, of course, for the US companies and so on. Yeah, and you can see these kind of stories, for example, in Mistral. Yeah, there were the data science people from Meta AI actually, but they were working out of Paris, and they were building their own like ecosystem in terms of Gen AI, and now it became one of the most like profound powerhouse of open source generative AI models.
So we need to then harness the talent we have in Europe to give value for ours. Otherwise, we will become a colonization of Europe for the benefit of...
Yeah, we just outsourced our talent in a way over the past years. So we have to we have to offer them attractive workplaces. So I think also encourage also SMEs and startup to scale, build the new unicorns. Yeah, you get the talent because they are still living here.
Yes, I completely agree that the talent is there. It just works for the big tech companies, paying just a little bit more. Just a little bit, sometimes 10 times. And, but the more we have ethical concerns, what the big tech companies do, the larger or the bigger are the chances that we actually win the talents over little by little. So that was a surprising statistics for me as well, that 60 to 70% of the talents actually have not moved to US. Their families are in Europe, they live in Europe, they have girlfriends, boyfriends in Europe. So it's just the salary difference that keeps them.
So all the prerequisites, all the components are there. We just need to coordinate that.
Sure.
And the SMEs are willing and they're interested. They just need to be channeled through the right medium so they can learn on how they can capitalize, on how they can become efficient. Is that the way to look at it?
Sort of,
yeah. I can also take the opportunity to say that at SEB, we are very aligned with what you're saying. And we have now, in collaboration with Aire, with Net Group, and with Kodjohvi, having this growth program where we first allow everybody in the SME field to get the educational part. And then we will have events around the country, so it's not just concentrated to Tallinn, but it will be around the country where they will actually see success stories of how others have managed and how they implemented it to get over this threshold of, oh, this is too complicated, this is too exotic, this is too advanced. And then with a partner like NetGroup and Aire and Kodiofi, we will also help them to identify an actual efficiency gain or revenue growth, and then we will take them through that step to achieve that. And I think that's the way, if we summarize it, that's the way we can help Europe advance and catch up.
Sure. It sounds like leadership to me.
Yes, leadership with practical feats. Yeah, very good. Any final thoughts?
I mean, just to say that it's always inspiring to come to Estonia. People are very innovatively minded, very open, move fast, but don't do stuff that is just for the technology. I mean, you look to the end goals, and I think that's very inspiring. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I think these kind of hotspots are, in this really complex situation worldwide, some agents of change could be considered as ones. And I think we need to find our self-confidence in Europe again. Yeah, because as we discussed, there is so much, the fundament is so great, but it's also a mind shift and mind change shift to get into the position where you really leverage that and are not shy and are not looking towards others. And so I think we have to come from intention to action.
Yes, I think we need a perfect combination of having a great ambition, vision, clear vision, but also be good in action. Practical, agile, quick, and do something every day, and not just demagogy and large ideas of Europe becomes competitive. We have to do something every day. So that's our mission at Aire also, to be rather demanding in ambition, to see Estonia as a big country, despite of the population, and to have the ambition, but actually to act.
And I hear from both other places in this conference and other sources that in Europe we are doing a lot of these things, and everybody, it's a drop, and then soon enough, just give it some time, it will be a mighty torrent that will wash away and prepare the way for the AI Europe.
That's it.
That's it.
Easy. Looks easy.
That's easy. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for your contributions. Thanks.
Thank you.